Welcome to The Explainer. Today we're diving straight into the complex and, let's be honest, often super frustrating world of PCOS nutrition. If you're navigating polycystic ovary syndrome, you already know the drill. The information overload out there is just totally overwhelming. So we're going to cut through the noise and lay out a clear, step-by-step blueprint on how to manage your diet, relying strictly on the absolute latest international evidence-based research.
Right off the bat, let's tackle the exact question millions of people are typing into search engines every single day. What is the perfect diet for PCOS? I mean, you go online and one person's telling you to cut out all carbs, the next says you absolutely must eat only raw foods, and a third insists on some highly specific, super restricted plan. It's a recipe for massive confusion, right? Well, we're going to answer this exact question today. But the real answer from the scientific community, it might actually surprise you.
So, Section 1, the tricky PCOS diagnosis, why we must get it right.
Before we can fix the engine, we gotta make sure we're actually working on the right car. Step 0 of managing PCOS is making sure the diagnosis is accurate in the very first place. You see, different medical organizations like the NIH or the Rotterdam criteria actually use slightly different checklists for what even constitutes PCOS. And diagnosing teenagers, that is particularly tricky. Why? Because normal hormonal changes during puberty perfectly mimic PCOS symptoms. If we take adult criteria and apply them to teenagers whose cycles are naturally still figuring themselves out in the years right after their first period, we risk massive overdiagnosis.
Just take a look at this. On the left, you've got the perfectly normal ovaries of a 14-year-old girl who is experiencing irregular periods. Now on the right, her follow-up scan at age 17 actually shows polycystic ovaries. Here's the kicker. During normal puberty, up to 40% of girls will have ovaries that temporarily look polycystic on an ultrasound, purely because of natural physiological changes. This is exactly why international guidelines are now strongly recommending we hold off on ultrasounds until 8 years after a girl's first period. We need to identify at-risk teens and monitor them, rather than rushing to slap a label on them that just causes a ton of unnecessary anxiety and totally unjustified dietary restrictions.
Let's move on to Section 2. The metabolic engine, unlocking insulin resistance.
Okay, so once a diagnosis is properly confirmed, we can finally shift from the what to the why. Meet the core metabolic engine driving PCOS: insulin resistance. Think of insulin like a key that unlocks your cells so glucose can get in and give you energy. But with insulin resistance, it's like that key just won't properly turn in the lock. Your pancreas panics, right? It pumps out even more insulin to basically force the door open. And those chronically high insulin levels, they act like a supercharged fertilizer for your ovaries, triggering them to overproduce androgens, or male hormones. This entire hormonal cascade is the very thing driving the irregular cycles, the acne, the hair growth, and the weight struggles. This specific metabolic dysfunction is exactly what our diet and lifestyle need to fix.
Now, prepare yourself for an absolute bombshell on diet culture. In a massive 2023 international evidence-based guideline, Monash University looked at all the available data and concluded, wait for it, there is literally no evidence to support any one type of diet composition over another for PCOS. Crazy, right? That magic perfect PCOS diet you've been desperately searching for? It's a myth. There is no singular macronutrient breakdown that scientifically beats all the others.
So what exactly do we do with that completely liberating information? Well, we build a sustainable ecosystem instead of locking ourselves in a rigid cage. Here is your step-by-step, evidence-based blueprint on how to manage your diet and lifestyle. Step 1, we ditch the myths. Step 2, we find your unique nutritional fit. Step 3, we combine it with the right kind of physical activity. And Step 4, we secure behavioral support for the long haul. Let's break these down one by one.
Which brings us to Step 1. Ditch the perfect diet myth.
It is totally time to validate your frustration with the diet industry and just officially remove the pressure of forced restriction from your shoulders. The guidelines make it crystal clear. Basically, any diet composition consistent with general population guidelines for healthy eating is going to have real health benefits for PCOS. Those restrictive fad diets that force you to completely cut out entire food groups, they almost always fail in the long run. They lead to low adherence, they cause awful weight cycling, and they actually put you at risk for nutritional deficiencies. Instead, the medical consensus is practically begging us to focus on sustainable, healthy eating. Think about adding nutrients like fiber and protein, rather than stripping away everything you actually love to eat. The absolute best diet for your PCOS is the healthy diet that you can realistically stick to. without totally sacrificing your mental health.
All right, step 2. Find your nutritional fit.
Since there isn't a single mandatory diet, you essentially have a whole toolbox of evidence-backed dietary frameworks to choose from. Let's quickly look at your options. A low-glycemic nexus diet causes a slow, nice, and gradual rise in blood glucose, which beautifully stabilizes those insulin levels we talked about. Then you've got the Mediterranean diet, packed with healthy fats and lean proteins, which is linked to improved fasting insulin and a much better lipid profile. The DASH diet is another great one. It lowers inflammatory markers and decreases fasting insulin. And of course, there's the ketogenic diet. Now, research does note it burns body fat and improves insulin sensitivity by keeping you in ketosis, but the data clearly warns it's generally only recommended for the short term. Why? Because extreme carb restriction can really risk nutritional deficiency over time. The absolute most crucial step in managing your PCOS diet? Pick the framework that matches your culture, your budget, and your actual lifestyle, and then just test how your body feels.
Moving right along to step 3, combine with movement.
Look, modifying your food intake alone, that's really just one side of the coin. You honestly cannot out-eat insulin resistance if you aren't moving your body. Physical activity is absolutely essential because it directly targets visceral fat, that deep belly fat that is actively driving the metabolic dysfunction. Whether you prefer aerobic training or hitting the weights with resistance training, just engaging your muscles directly improves your insulin sensitivity and helps bring down the chronically high insulin triggering your symptoms. Movement is what physically repairs the locks on your cells so that insulin key can finally turn again.
And finally, step 4, seek behavioral support and advocacy.
Managing PCOS is a marathon, not a sprint. The 2023 guidelines really stress the importance of behavioral interventions. This means co-developing realistic goals and a true partnership with your doctor, not just being handed a generic pamphlet on your way out the door. It involves learning self-monitoring, problem-solving, and even assertiveness training so you can confidently manage the inevitable setbacks. And crucially, we have got to address weight stigma. So many women with PCOS experience deep bias in healthcare settings. They're constantly told to just lose weight, while their underlying metabolic issues are totally ignored. The guidelines actually demand that healthcare professionals minimize weight bias and recognize the intense psychological burden of this syndrome. Remember, you have every right to advocate for respectful, comprehensive care.
And that brings us to our final thought. The international consensus reminds us that there are massive, life-changing benefits to a healthy lifestyle with PCOS, even in the complete absence of weight loss. So I really want you to ask yourself, are your lifestyle goals prioritizing your overall metabolic health, your hormonal balance, and your mental well-being? Or are you just fighting an exhausting, restrictive battle against the scale? By ditching the fads, finding your unique nutritional fit, moving your body to build insulin sensitivity, and advocating for compassionate care, you are taking the power back. I really hope this explainer has given you the clarity and the actual blueprint you need to manage PCOS on your own terms. Keep learning, keep advocating for yourself, and I'll catch you in the next one.